Hi, and welcome to the Poplar Forest Video Gazette, Episode 3. My name is Karen McIlvoy, and I am the Archaeology Laboratory Analyst here at Poplar Forest. And today I've brought you here to the site of one of the slave quarters here on the property because I'd like to talk to you about the enslaved men and women who actually lived and labored here at Poplar Forest. Now, Mr. Jefferson, who owned the property, was a meticulous note-taker and record-keeper, and a vast number of his personal papers still survive today. So when we read these and combine them with archaeological excavations at various sites around the property, such as this one, then we actually can build a better picture of what life was like for the enslaved residents of Poplar Forest. So, when Jefferson inherited the property in 1773, Poplar Forest was already a working tobacco plantation of about 5,000 acres, but it only had 11 people living on it. 5 men, 3 women, and 3 children. By the time he began to build his retreat home here in 1805, he'd actually moved enough people here that there was a relatively stable enslaved community of about 70 individuals, and at its peak, Poplar Forest had about 100 people, enslaved people living here. Now this site, we've been doing archaeology on Poplar Forest since the 1980s, and this site was discovered in the 1990s, mid-90s. It was the site of 3 slave cabins that were occupied from about 1790 to about 1812. And over the past 20 years or so, our collection of artifacts, including the objects from this site, has grown to be quite large. Archaeologists deal with a lot of things. We deal with a lot of things that range from the delicate or unique all the way to the really common and everyday, even industrial. But sometimes it's the most mundane of objects that actually makes you stop and think, that hits you. You know, these are the bits and pieces that remain from somebody's life. You know, who was the last person to actually touch this thing? And that's actually the case with this object right here. Easy moving on that. This is called a tobacco punch, or a tobacco spike or spear, and it was used by field workers during a tobacco harvest. A punch made it easier for workers to collect the leaves and string them onto long poles or strings so that they could be hung up in a large airy barn or other place so that they could dry and cure. And you can see in this photo that my colleague is showing you that they're actually still used sometimes today. And it's that little metal spike at the end of the stick. Thank you, Rachel. So growing tobacco is hot, it's labor intensive, it happens all year round, it's not really truly seasonal. And so it isn't hard to imagine a young enslaved person here at Poplar Forest that was just chafing under the yoke of daily toil and yearning to be free, yearning to escape. And we actually know of a young man here at Poplar Forest who's named Hercules. We have a cat photobombing us right now. So Hercules was born in 1794, probably right around here somewhere. He was the 5th child of a woman named Betty, but his father died when he was 13. However, by this time, both of his older brothers were married with children, so it's possible that they sort of stepped in and stepped up as sort of a father figure. Despite having a relatively large and stable family at Poplar Forest, Hercules decided to flee the plantation when he was 19 years old, and he actually made it about 50 miles before he got captured in a place called Buckingham, Virginia. He was incarcerated as a runaway, and then he was sent up to Monticello to face Mr. Jefferson. But Mr. Jefferson actually chose to be lenient. He said that the time in jail was enough of a punishment, and so he sent Hercules home to Poplar Forest and wrote to the overseer that he felt that he had conveyed to Hercules the errors of his ways, of what he called his first folly. But Hercules' story doesn't end there, obviously. Jefferson's overseer in 1819 was a man named Joel Yancey, and letters that we still have that survive between him and Jefferson give us actually a really good picture of what happened that summer of 1819. An unknown epidemic actually swept through the population of Poplar Forest, and an awful lot of the enslaved men and women here got gravely ill, including Hercules. But Hercules got better, whereas a lot of the other people got worse and even died. Several died. And so a fear of, or a sense of fear and suspicion sort of spread through the community, and people who lived here actually, somebody accused Hercules of having conspired with an unknown, another enslaved man whose name or identity we don't know, to actually cause this illness or to cause harm to people on purpose. So Yancey, we don't know if he really believed this charge, or if he was just trying to appease the people here, or if he was just trying to calm things down, but he did end up sort of apprehending Hercules and this other man, and he took them before the local magistrate here in Lynchburg. Now, this man said there was not enough evidence to jail either one of them, and so there are no consequences that we know of. However, Yancey did end up writing a letter to Jefferson saying that he truly believed Hercules had, what's the quote, done a great deal of mischief and ought to be hung. Not jailed, not sold, killed. So clearly something is going on here with Hercules' life. He's not fitting into the population here. And his struggles didn't end. They finally came to a head 2 years later, when he was apprehended a third time. In October of 1822, while in the fields, another young man who was here named Billy stabbed another overseer named William Goff. Now, he knew he was going to be in trouble, so Hercules, and Hercules' nephew, Gowan, they actually ran off, but they were captured pretty instantaneously and put in jail in Lynchburg. And it's important to understand that in 1822, this happened about 3 months after a failed, highly publicized slave revolt in South Carolina. So the white people around here were quite fearful. So they instantly assumed that the level of violence that this particular incident had involved was an indication that these 3 men had been planning to incite a slave revolt. Now, when they were actually tried, these charges were proven to be not true. There was no evidence that they were attempting to, or conspiring to start anything larger, but Billy was the only one actually convicted of his crime, and his crime was obviously stabbing William Goff, and he was the only one actually sentenced to an official punishment, which was to be burnt in the hand and whipped. However, this was 3 strikes for Hercules, and Jefferson apparently decided this was enough. And so those 3 men, Hercules, Billy, and Gowan, and also a man named Manuel, who might have been Hercules' brother-in-law, were taken down to New Orleans, or to Louisiana, to be either sold or hired out. They ended up, all 4 of them, being hired out to a man named Colonel Croghan, about 30 miles upriver from New Orleans. And unfortunately, within a year, Hercules and Gavin were both dead from some illness, unspecified. We don't really know which one. Billy once again ran away and ended up in jail in New Orleans, and that's actually the last time we've heard of Manuel. He was still alive in 1824. So Hercules' story is actually quite tragic. But his is only one way that the men and women who lived and worked here at Poplar Forest actually experienced life. So if this one little tobacco punch can make us remember Hercules and all of his struggles, you get that? What stories can we get from all of these?